All right, hello. How is everybody doing? I hope you're doing great. I'm doing okay. It's not a beautiful day out there, but I'm okay with that. I'll just jump right in. Enough with the formalities. So today, there's something that's been on my mind. It's something I've been thinking about and noticing recently, and it's something that's kind of strange. And it's something that I believe is actually starting to get picked up by by people in power who actually have the ability to change things, or at least they have the ability to bring some things into the idea of, let's say, Congress or any of the legislative decision makers. And this is very encouraging. This is quite encouraging that this idea I'm about to talk about is being explored on a higher level. Because if you listen to this and you listen to my prior videos or whatever, chances are that this is something you've noticed as well, and you've noticed that this is probably the single biggest problem that we're having right now in our culture. Mind you, I'm Canadian, and whatever happens in Canada is essentially what ends up happening in America. Like, we're so involved in American politics right now that we can't help but be affected. We can't help but have our culture be affected by the changes in the culture of the Americans. And realistically, Canada is America Light, so that's one thing to know if you're not from Canada. And if you are from Canada, well, that's news to you, I suppose, if you didn't know. Okay, but anyways, the idea that I wanted to talk about, I'm kind of beating around the bush. The idea I wanted to talk about that's been on my mind is this idea that it seems as though there's obviously a culture war. There's obviously a culture war. You cannot deny that. There is a group of people who have a very strong set of beliefs, and they believe that everybody else who doesn't share their beliefs are idiots, are flat earthers, are Trumpers, are anti-vaxxers, are mongrels. These people just believe that everybody else who disagrees with them is the scum of the earth. And you don't need to look far to see any proof of this. Just go on any CNN, MSNBC, ABC, go on any one of their videos on YouTube and look at the comment section and just read what these people are saying. Most of them, it's very scary, because most of them are essentially equating people who disagree with them as just not worthy of life. As not worthy of life. That's what these people are doing. They're equating anybody else who doesn't agree with them as being the scum of the earth, and they should be. Life would be way better if they weren't around. That's essentially the message that they're sending. And this seems like 90 to 95% of the comments in these videos. Again, we don't know who comments. We don't know what type of person leaves comments and in what state they are. We could imagine that oftentimes it's people who are the most reactive who leave those types of very extreme comments. But still, it's still the fact that these ideas, and even what those news networks that are very much in line with this, it's an ideology at this point. It's a complete mechanism of thought. It's almost a religion. And it seems as though all the major news networks, other than Fox, in the States anyways, are completely captured by this way of thinking. And it's not objective, and it's very denigrating to anybody who disagrees with them. And that's the thing. They've essentially constructed this narrative where there is only one way to be right, and it's their way. So what ends up happening, though, is because of this mode of duality that they have constructed within themselves, that, well, if you have our ideas, then you are the good guy and you are on the right side of history. And if you don't have our ideas, then you are the bad guy and you are on the wrong side of history, and you must be destroyed, or you mustn't be listened to, or you must be dealt with, something like that. But what ends up happening with this type of thinking is that you end up alienating people who, let's say, share some ideas that you have, right? Let's say there's a Venn diagram between people on the far left and people on the moderate left, or maybe even people in the center, or, center left. There's definitely a Venn diagram there with some overlap in the middle of shared interests and shared ideas. But what ends up happening is the side that's on the far left, which for some reason seems to have completely managed to grip the culture very tightly and kind of call the shots. Everybody on that side, it's if you don't agree with every single idea, it doesn't matter if you agree with some of our ideas, you have to agree with every single idea. And if you don't, then you're the enemy. But this brings me to that problem with the Venn diagram. It's that you're excluding people who partially agree with you and people who, at some levels, they say, well, I don't know about that one. Let's have a talk. That might be an extreme way of seeing things. But they don't want to have that talk. And as soon as you bring that up, again, even if you agree, let's say, with 50% of the ideas, the fact that it's not 100 makes you an enemy. And that's what's happening right now. That's what it seems to me is going on. And I think what's great about what's going on lately, though, is that it seems like people are starting to clue into this. I mean, there were people who knew about this stuff a long time ago, and there were people who had the finger on the button about what was actually happening. It's been years now. But it seems like culture is always a bit slow to catch up to whatever the first people are to spot something. Seems like the culture reacts pretty slowly. But so what ends up happening now, though, is that we're seeing people like Rand Paul and Ted Cruz and other people I'm not quite sure of, but we're seeing them in Congress actually asking really important questions to basically everybody who's proposing these ideas that should be questioned, right? Every idea should be questioned. And what I like about it is I think they're starting to get to the major issue, and they're starting to close in on being able to present the main problem that we're having right now. And that is that we cannot question the fact that we can't question things, right? That's the biggest problem we have right now in our society, is there's one group of people who do not want people to question things. They think that their way is the sacred way, is the way to be, is the penultimate way that will lead to utopia. And these people think very much that if you even question their ideas, that's sacrilegious. But the thing that's crazy is you're allowed to question ideas. You have to question ideas. You have to question everything. You can't just accept things at face value. That's preposterous. But anyways, it seems as if some of the powers that be, and the thing that's sad about this, though, is that the people who are starting to question these things, they are, let's say, Republicans. So they are seen as being on the right. But I would say that the people who are posing these questions don't come from the right. That's not the thing that's going on. These questions come from people who are curious, right? So even if it's a person who's on the right that's speaking these ideas, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a right idea, that it's a right-wing idea, it's a Republican idea or a conservative idea. That's not the case. It just means that these people are bringing up questions that are very neutral and that many people, even in the center left, are asking. For example, the biggest one that I would say right now is a very hot topic, and Rand Paul, thank you, sir, for bringing it to the attention of the public and to the attention of Congress. But it's the question of natural immunity and the fact that it is not being discussed anywhere in whatsoever at all in any of the major institutions that have been captured, or even in the news networks, or in Congress, other than Rand Paul bringing it up, or in legislative powers. There's no one having the conversation of, well, in those positions, there's no one having the conversation, but we on the internet are having the conversation. That's all we're asking. We're all wondering, why the hell are we not considering natural immunity? I mean, if you've already had the virus, there's a study in Israel that shows you are 6 to, I believe, 13 times more protected than if you had the vaccine. So, are we just going to dismiss that? Are we just going to not consider that that's a realistic fact? And I mean, this is stuff you learn in elementary school. This is one of the first things you learn. You learn that when you get sick, your body incorporates that sickness into its immune system and knows how to beat it. Right? That's one of the miracles of the human immune system. The human immune system is a miracle. It's such a sophisticated way of protecting us from, let's say, minor illnesses, because if you get a very serious disease, sometimes it compromises your immune system, and some people have compromised immune systems. But the thing that's so worrisome about this entire debacle is that some people are just questioning the fact. Like, there's nothing wrong with asking the question of, hey, why aren't we considering natural immunity? Like, that's a completely reasonable question, and we're not allowed to ask it. We're not even allowed to consider it. And if we do ask that question, then the entire infrastructure has set up this system in which people who are, let's say, who don't question things enough, people they accept things at face value, they hear things and they just go with it, and those people end up turning on you. Just because you're asking a question, just because you're saying, hey, well, what about natural immunity? That seems like a really serious thing we have to consider. Why are we not allowing people with natural immunity to not get the vaccine? What is this vaccine mandate? Why do we have to do this? This isn't okay. People who have had the virus and who beat it are protected already. And we should consider that in the equation for the herd immunity that we're looking for to open everything up. To me, it's completely asinine. It's completely backwards. And the fact that we can't ask the question raises so many questions. Like, if we were to explore why can't we ask those questions, then the road doesn't go very far, unfortunately. The road goes to two places, which is super unfortunate. One place is that these people do not want to entertain the possibility of vaccine alternatives because they truly do believe that the vaccine is our best option at actually stopping the virus. It is our best option to driving this virus to extinction. That's what they believe. That may be what they believe, and they believe that it's our responsibility, a collective responsibility. Everybody has to get the vaccine because it is the easiest solution. I believe Occam's razor is essentially this concept. This is the easiest solution. There's no nuance to it. Just everybody get vaccinated, and if everybody's vaccinated, this thing will go away. Right? That's the one road that if you start to explore, why are they not considering these ideas, or why are they not even letting us question these ideas? Then that's one of the roads. They just don't want any sort of resistance in their plan to say, let's say, just vaccinate everyone because that's the easiest solution. So that's one idea. But the other road that it leads to is much more dire. It's much scarier. And it's just frightening because the implications that the alternative road has are essentially that there is, I don't want to say a conspiracy, but it's essentially that there is some serious authoritarianism going on. And maybe, you know what, maybe I'm wrong here. Maybe I'm wrong about these two roads. Maybe this is actually just one road. Maybe these people genuinely think that this is the only way, and they have such little respect and hubris for freedom that they are willing to be authoritarian in order to accomplish that feat. That seems more reasonable. I don't necessarily think that these people are just trying to mandate the vaccine as a means to, let's say, test how many people are willing to bend the knee or how many people are willing to just take the jab or things like that. I don't think that is the problem, because that would imply a very large conspiracy. which is a possibility. I don't like going down that road because I don't think it's practical. It seems much more that this is just like a naturalistic type of thing that cropped up. It's just people really have these beliefs that this is the way to be, and they're willing to force other people to do it, which is not okay neither. That's very much not okay, and that's a flawed way of seeing things because we live in an increasingly complex society. And if we're going to approach any sort of public health or any sort of cultural, societal, if we're going to implement a cultural or societal, let's say, tool that'll impact us very deeply, there has to be nuance. There has to be nuance. We are increasingly a nuanced people. So, what do we do about that? What do we do about it? Do we just sit here? Do we just agree with it blindly, or shouldn't the people who seriously believe that this is a problem, shouldn't we stand up and say, "Hey, I think this is a problem"? And we could be respectful about it. We don't need to call everybody assholes and dumbasses and sheep. We don't need to call them that. We don't need to be aggressive about these things. Sure, there are many people on both sides, and especially on the side that has the upper hand right now. There are people who are very, let's say, inhumane, because if they had the power, you can just tell by the way they comment on things, the way they think, the way they talk. If they had control of the situation, some horrific shit would take place. Some horrendous things would happen. Because these people have no human respect for the soul that is people who disagree with them. If you've listened to Jordan Peterson talk about, I believe when he talks about Hitler, it's very interesting. And he talks about this with authoritarianism in general. Authoritarianism is, especially left-wing authoritarianism, is often implied with disgust, with the emotion of disgust. And you can kind of get that from all these people who are in, let's say, the left establishment, who are very much in control of things. There's so much contempt and negativity in their voice. And they look down on everybody. They really, really do. And that's just not the way to be. That's the problem. That's the major problem right now, is that these people are in control, or they're largely in control. They hold a lot of institutions, and they seriously look down on others who disagree with them. I mean, that is one of the most horrific things I think that I've ever heard of, or that I've ever thought, or that I'd ever experienced. Now, I remember when I was in teachers college, and it was like a cult. They wanted to teach us, they were trying to teach us to teach the kids to essentially be social justice warriors, and essentially to have these opinions. But needless to say, I left teachers college. I couldn't do that. I was the only one who disagreed with everything. Everybody was like, yeah, you're right. And we're kind of heading in this direction of progression for the sake of progression. And that is one of the most dangerous things, because, and then if we're aiming for progression, if that's what we're aiming for, we're just aiming for the outcome of progression. Well, if we really go for that goal, what's the one thing you're going to do? You're going to cut ties with everything you've built up to this point, right? That's not the way you do things. For example, imagine we're engineering bridges, right? And all of a sudden we decide, well, you know what? Let's try to reinvent the bridge. Let's try to bring forward our understanding of bridge technology and bridges in general, and let's try to hit progression for the sake of progression. Well, you can't do that. That doesn't work, because you can't just abandon all the physical laws and all the actual realities that have allowed us to even build these epic bridges in the first place. You can't deny those, and you can't dispense with them. You cannot abandon all those notions and those concepts and those ideas. But if you're aiming for progression for the sake of progression, that's what you have to do. You have to completely abandon our past notions and our past structures, because those are things in the past, and virtually by definition, they are not progressive. And to me, that seems to be what the major issue is. It seems that these people are just aiming for progression for the sake of progression, and they are espousing some preposterous shit. They are saying some things that hurt your brain. They say things, and it's like you can't be serious. And I understand that a lot of these people think they're coming from a place of compassion, but they're coming from this place of breaking reality. And it's very strange. It's very, very strange that we've entered this paradigm where lies are essentially the pillar that the major institutions are standing on. And it makes no sense. And it's hurting us. It's very much hurting us. And the thing that's crazy is the people who are pushing these narratives, they very much think that this is the way forward, that this is the true way of being. But they're completely backwards. And one thing that really gets to me, one thing that I can't wrap my head around, is just the sheer number of logical incoherencies that these people have in their ideologies. It's completely backwards on every single level of analysis. What's the word? I can't think of the word right now, but it's incoherent. That's all it is. It's incoherent. Logic, because they have this logic structure, right? Let's say they have a logic structure, and they have a logic structure, and parts of their logic structure are completely opposite of other parts of their logic structure. But they continue, and they don't even address the fact that that's the case. The perfect example is that this entire mode of being, this entire realm of thought that they've entered is completely fabricated on the foundation that life is what you make it, right? That there is no intrinsic meaning in anything. And the only meaning that is actually derived onto the world is what people make of it. If that makes any sense, right? I think it's postmodernism. It's essentially that life is meaningless and nothing really exists, and everything only exists because we say it exists, right? And this is completely bananas, because I mean it does make sense at a certain point. It's like, yeah, that's true, but things also have intrinsic value. But I'm getting off track here. That's beyond the point. The point I'm trying to make is that these people build their entire thought structure on the foundation that anything is just what we make it, and anything can be anything, and everything we're doing is actually power games, and we're creating the world around us, and we're manipulating things in an attempt to gain power over other groups for our group. Right? That's the fundamental belief. That is the very root of their thinking, of their entire thought system. That's the root of it. But what's crazy about this is, first of all, this is kind of wrong. It's wrong to just say that, first of all, because we know things have intrinsic value, and we know that we experience things in an intrinsic way that is nudged in directions thanks to our millions of years of evolution, right? We have millions of years of evolution behind us. We have a nervous system that is millions of years old. And this nervous system directs us in the directions that we go, right? It's not to say we don't have free will or anything like that. It's just to say that we have intrinsic motivations, and we have intrinsic modes of operation, and things don't happen in a vacuum. That makes no sense. That's not the mode of operation of the world, right? We're very sophisticated in a specific direction. If things took place in a vacuum, then at the beginning of human history, nothing would have ever gotten done, because there would be no motivation for anything. Anyways, I digress. What I was saying was that this is kind of the basis of their entire thought structure, is that anything could be anything it is, and all you guys are doing is trying to create power games. Okay. And then, from that route, they get to this place where, well, if you disagree with us, then you're wrong. Think about that for a second. Their fundamental belief is that the world could be categorized in an infinite amount of ways. And then they say, but if you disagree with our way of seeing things, then you're wrong. Think about that. Think about how preposterous that is. Think about how that makes literally zero sense. And this is the basis. These are, I would say, the two main mechanisms that's going on right now. And to me, it just seems that the fact that these things are butting heads with each other, and the fact that this entire ideology has just gripped the culture completely and the society completely and is really starting to impact real life behaviors and real life outcomes. And the fact that what is affecting these real life behaviors and these real life outcomes is this incoherent philosophy and this incoherent way of being. Well, of course that's going to reap havoc. That's going to destroy everything it touches. It's going to corrupt everything it touches because it's corrupted from the very start. And I feel, full circle, I feel like we're finally starting to get some representation from people who are just bringing this up. They're bringing this up in legislative power. They're bringing this up in Congress. They're bringing this up in the public eye. And these people have power to change things. And it's so refreshing. It feels like, I don't know about you guys, but to me, it feels like maybe we're starting to see the rise of a bit more logical coherency, or at least we're starting to see the rise in the fact that we can ask questions. Yeah. And I think on that note, I think that's enough for today. All right, well, have a great day, everybody. Goodbye.